Hello again, everyone. Welcome to the Fantasy Slant, powered by Pro Football Focus and brought to you by Draftkings. I am your usual Fantasy Slant host, Michael Moore, along with my usual Fantasy Slant co-host, Russell Clay. Say hello, Russell.
Ladies and gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
There you go. All inclusive here on the Fantasy Slant, Russ. So, we're happy that football's back, Russ, but also kind of depressed because everyone just seems to keep getting injured and severely. So we're gonna go through this week's injury report, which is fairly significant at the top of the show, and then in the middle of it, I think you and I will cover a team that is probably ascending fantasy-wise and probably real life, and then a team that is definitely descending and just looks like a complete mess. And I will give all of you your own guesses at home to determine who that's going to be. But let's just say it's going to be good times talking about it. But we will end the show with some Draftkings value plays for Week 3. So without further ado, Russ, let's jump right in. I think the headline this week, probably Tony Romo, broken collarbone, 8 weeks out. What else is there to say, Russ?
Just a brutal stretch for the Dallas Cowboys here. I mean, they lose Dez last week, and every day it seems to be people are tacking on another week to that injury. So I'm not sure if he's even going to be back this year, especially. Maybe they could patch together a few more games, but it's going to be tough. I mean, and it sounds like Witten's limping around, and
okay, to be fair, though, Russ, he's always limping around.
That's just kind of how he runs now, yeah.
Come on now.
But it's just there's nobody left. Like, it's barren.
Right.
DeMarco Murray's gone, and I mean, we'll get into his situation later. But if they had him right now, at least they could ride the run game.
Right.
But, I mean, Whedon might work for a game, but kind of like with Tyrod Taylor, like it's not going to work out long term. So I think this can pretty much take them out of the playoff hunt. For fantasy wise, I don't really see much there either. So it's just all bad right now for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way around it. I mean, you mentioned Dez, which, the prognosis, I saw somebody mention today, the prognosis from Dr. Jerry Jones at first was like 4 to 6 weeks.
Right.
But that quickly ballooned to about 12 weeks. So I agree. I mean, as far as fantasy seasons go, I don't know that you can I don't think you should hold your breath waiting for Dez to come back and save you. With Romo, though, I mean, they're looking at probably 6 to 8 weeks, probably 8 being the conservative number, which obviously is a large chunk of everyone's fantasy season. But you never know. Could come back for some fantasy playoffs. But again, quarterback is such a deep position that it's sort of like, why would you hold on to that? Or, unless you have some injury later in the season, there's really no reason for Romo. With Whedon, yeah, man, I'm with you. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. He looked great yesterday. He was 7-7 to start out, but he can't move. He literally cannot roll out of the pocket unless he's just going to get taken down. I mean, and because that's one of the things that Romo does really well is he escapes the pressure and sort of, drags the play out to where his receivers can get open. But with Whedon, man, I mean, you have to hit your route quickly because he's not going to stand up very straight.
And every time someone talks about Brandon Whedon, we do have to mention he is 65 years old.
He is.
So it's going to be tough sledding for him.
Really, he's collecting Social Security checks. He has no real motivation to be out there. So,
direct deposit, baby.
Yeah, But I'm with you. I mean, don't get me wrong. They weren't exactly playing a good team yesterday, so I think they could scratch and claw their way to a win. But it's really hard to see them competing against some of the better teams out there,
Yeah, in a standard redraft league, you're not going to be holding him. Maybe in a super flex or a 2QB league that's deep, you hold on to him just in case he comes back because that's such a rare position in those formats. But yeah, you're not really looking for anything, and it's going to be rough.
Right.
You're not
abandoned ship. I think that's the lesson here. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, enough with the downer talk, Russ. Let's go to, I guess, a slightly better injury or more optimistic injury, I guess.
Yeah.
Eddie Lacy injured his ankle last night. Luckily, not too serious. There's talk he could come back as early as this week, week 3. He does have a Monday night game against Kansas City, so he does have some time. But first, let's talk about Lacy himself, Russ. What does this injury do to him short term and long term?
I'm not pessimistic on Lacy. I think he's going to be fine within the next few weeks. I think Starks may be more involved sort of the next 2 weeks or so. And if they're bringing him back slowly, maybe 3 weeks. But, I mean, you can survive a week or 2 without him, and then he'll be back to normal, I think, in a few weeks.
Yeah. But you mentioned James Starks, Russ, which I personally am a big fan. I mean, look, he had 20 carries last night in place of Lacy for 95 yards against, not the Seattle defense of yesteryear, but still a pretty good defense. Where would you rank Starks? Let me ask you this, say, week 3, week 4 rankings, assuming Lacy's out. Is he a running back 1 for you? Is he a running back 2? Where does he fit?
It's really tough because you look at this week with T.Y. Hilton. We didn't know until literally today that he was actually playing. So it's kind of hard. But tentatively, if Lacy's out and with Nelson out, I mean, they're going to lean on the run game more than usual. So I do like him, especially in DFS if you can get him, or maybe off waivers if you're missing Lacy. So
yeah. I mean, look, I think this is a golden opportunity for someone to sort of fill that gap for teams out there. It's fairly likely you have a player on your team that has suffered the injury bug so far. So if it's at running back, or like you said, if you're a Lacy owner, I mean, Starks is great, man. I mean, look, especially PPR leagues, if you can get Starks, I mean, to me, he's, obviously I think a running back 2, assuming Lacy's out completely, but he's got some RB1, low-end RB1 potential for me, assuming it's a PPR league. So, for a week or 2, I think he's worth it. And like you said, for DFS, I think he's definitely worth it because he's going to be super cheap. But again, it's one of those things where he plays Monday night, so it's kind of dicey. But, if you roll the dice, it could hit pretty big. So,
in the cartoons when the dude's standing in the house and then the house just falls down and there's just someone standing in the middle.
Yeah.
That's Aaron Rodgers right now.
Right.
Just everyone on his team is getting hurt, and somehow he's just steady, getting 2-3 touchdowns a game, 270 yards, and just winning games still.
That's what he does. He's the greatest.
Unbelievable.
You can't. He's the greatest. I mean, some of the throws he had, even off like his back foot or on the run. Yeah, I mean, look, to me, and just to get off track a little bit, for dynasty startups, I mean, Rodgers to me is a definite first rounder, and for a 2-quarterback league, he is like borderline top overall. But that's just me. So.
He's proving right now that it literally doesn't matter who's out there with him, and he's going to make people good,
Right. James Jones, another Social Security recipient, is catching touchdowns. Which, look, it makes me believe I can catch touchdowns. That's what Aaron Rodgers does. He's a dream maker. So, all right. So moving on, back to the quarterback position, Russ. Drew Brees, at least with Romo, it feels like he'll bounce back from that injury. I mean, he's still pretty young and wasn't showing signs of slowing down before this injury. It was kind of a fluke type thing. But with Brees, man, you've got this shoulder injury, which, everyone today I know, I'm sure you were freaking out. I was freaking out that it was a rotator cuff, which would have been apocalyptic for Brees owners. But turns out it's just a shoulder injury, but it's lingering. And there's really no telling when and if he'll even get over it. So, what's your mood on Brees now, Russ, and say redraft league? Because I think there's no doubt he was a quarterback 1, and some might even say a top-end quarterback 1. But where does he stand now for you?
As someone who was buying a lot of him in this offseason and sort of not buying that he was getting older and regressing, I don't like the team around him. And it seems like maybe he's not the Brees of old anymore. And an injury sort of furthers and makes it easier to not like him if you did like him coming into the season. This kind of lets you off the hook a little bit because, okay, I got to start thinking of a backup plan here.
Yeah, I mean, he just doesn't look good. I mean, it's sort of like him and Peyton, drank the same water this offseason. Now, given, I think Peyton, I think we can all agree, has the far superior supporting cast around him. So it's gonna mitigate that some. But with Brees, they traded away Graham this offseason. Marcus Colston, again, another retiree or borderline, they keep throwing him out there. You've got Brandon Cooks, but I mean, they're just not making him a part of the game plan, at least not that I can see.
It just seems like he's not in the right role right now for whatever reason, or something just isn't clicking for him. Maybe he needs another year or something, but it just doesn't.
And it's almost like, if they still had Graham, he would have been the perfect complement for that, right? Because you could have had Cooks going underneath, left, right, stretching the field, and then Graham just going down the middle on a seam route. But without that threat, it sort of makes Cooks very, very limited in what he can do, because he's truly one of the few playmakers on that entire offense now. So they're going to be preparing for him. And, even when they don't prepare for him, it's not like the Saints are exactly forcing it to him.
Right. Quickly, what do you think of Jimmy Graham now?
Well,
are you downgrading him significantly?
I put him squarely in that sort of second tier of tight ends now. And I did before the season started, because for a couple reasons. One, the biggest reason for me, at least heading into the season, was just lack of opportunity. The Saints had 650 pass attempts last year. He had, I think, 20% of those. Seattle, likewise had 450 pass attempts last year, and we're literally the least passing team in the league. So it's not like, Russell Wilson is worse than Drew Brees. He's not. But it was just lack of opportunity and lack of targets and attention and all of that initially made me think, hey, Graham is still a freak of an athlete, and he still should be utilized as a red zone target. But look, Seattle, that's not their game, man. That's not what they do. And so far, they're not doing it. So, but you still got to take the talent there. But look, if this, I guess, theme continues where they're not, looking to him, whether it's in the red zone or not, then I could downgrade him even more.
Yeah, I think I feel comfortable saying I like Kelsey for the rest of the season.
I like a couple guys for the rest of the season.
And I never really I envisioned it being a little closer, but they just don't use him. Watching the game last night, it just doesn't seem like he's really part of the featured guy in the passing game like I thought he was going to be. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and it's I did see something on Twitter, and I need to get better at citing my sources, but somebody said that essentially Seattle looks like they're on the 1 yard line again at the Super Bowl, and they just want to keep running it and running it just to prove that they can do it. So with that in mind, Jimmy Graham will not be getting many looks this season. But all right, so to the last injury of week 2, Russ, that we'll cover before we move on, hopefully, to greener pastures. Jay Cutler, the Bears quarterback, who quietly had a good game yesterday until he got hurt. Initially, folks thought it was maybe a concussion, maybe a upper body injury, but it turns out it was a hamstring. He's looking to be out maybe 2 to 3 weeks. You've got Jimmy Clausen, the previous Fantasy Slant host Scott Spratt's favorite player, truly favorite player. So shout out, Scott, to you, who's going to take the reins for the next couple weeks. What does this do, Russ, for you as far as the Bears go? I mean, they don't have exactly an easy schedule. They got Seattle next week, so it's not like they had a cakewalk going in.
Yesterday was a rough day for anything Chicago Bears. The Forte got a touchdown vultured by Jeremy Langford.
I know, which we haven't seen in a couple years. It was kind of weird.
Yeah, and then Alshon didn't play. Cutler got hurt. He threw a pick 6 on the play. He got hurt, and they got crushed. I just think the Bears could be really bad this year. I think this could be a really bad team. And I mean, I guess that's okay for fantasy points and comeback mode, but unless Kevin White miraculously comes back and Alshon gets healthy, I'm just not going to be really buying this offense. I mean, teams are just going to be focusing purely on Forte now. So this is not a good situation at all.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's going to be a mess. Yeah, Jimmy Clausen in relief, 14 of 23, 121 yards, an interception. As you alluded to, Forte had 60 yards on 15 carries. The lack of carries, I think, was fairly unnecessary. It was obvious
game
being
flow.
Down that big.
Yeah, game flow. Yeah.
And yeah, it's look, when the Bears lose, they're going to lose bad. And it's just not going to be good. And again, Cutler, for the few minutes he was in there yesterday, looked decent. 8 of 9 for 120 yards and a touchdown. Added 24 yards on the ground, by the way. So it was like retro Cutler with his legs there. But I'm with you. I think with Forte, even heading into this season, he was getting up there in age, and you were really playing Russian roulette with him as far as age goes. I mean, he's turning 30 this year. Again, not saying he can't do it. He is a physical freak of nature, but you're really rolling the dice on assuming that he's going to still produce like he was.
Right.
And, without Marshall there, with Jeffrey being hurt the first week or so, yeah, it's just it's not going to be good. I'm with you. I think they're definitely in play for a top 10 pick again next year.
I might even say top 5.
Hey, now
from what I've seen,
that's defense, a hot take, Russ. That's a hot take. We're gonna write all these down and go back. So just remember
that defense is really bad. So I think we're giving up a lot of points.
That, and I had some optimism with John Fox taking over. He's always usually done above average for the defenses he's taking over. He really has. But I'm with you. The personnel is just not there for that.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, it's not good. Why is this such a downer show, Russ? We need to pick this up. So
this was a down week. All the running backs got hurt.
It really was. And, just as
I'm just ready to move on.
Well, and just as a side note, I'm sure a lot of our listeners do suicide pools, and I do too. And I was one of the many who took New Orleans yesterday and saw my picks go down in flames. So, yeah, weird week. Yeah. Bad week. We're ready to move on and look at nicer things. I don't know how else to put it. So.
A buddy of mine, Nathan Powell, said that he did a survivor pool and he picked the Saints, but everyone else in the survivor pool picked the Saints. So they're just everyone's just moving on. Let's all just move on.
Right. It's a quick start. It's still early enough in the season. We'll just forget the first 2 weeks ever happened.
On to week 3.
Right. But before that, Russ.
Yes.
Let's go over a bright spot, if you will, in the fantasy community. I'm talking, of course, about the Arizona Cardinals, who completely thrashed the previously mentioned Bears. 48 points. Carson Palmer, 17 to 24, 185 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 of those to Mr. Ageless himself, Larry Fitzgerald. What's your assessment, Russ, of the Cardinals' offense overall? Is this legit? Are they going to keep this up? Is this a fluke? Are they just playing a really bad team? What are we doing?
I think as long as Carson Palmer stays healthy, they have a chance at this division. And Larry Fitzgerald is a Hall of Fame wide receiver. He's not what he once was, but he's so technically sound. I mean, it's kind of like Anquan Bolden, where it doesn't really matter how slow he is. It's just, can he make the catch in traffic? Yes. Can he go up over people? Yes. Can he out physical people? Yes. So Fitzgerald is just an amazing receiver. Is he going to have 3 touchdowns every week? No. But
that's a hot take, Russ. That's another hot take. You're on fire tonight.
But Michael Floyd's going to get back and be healthy, and I mean he's not going to be.
So what?
No, he's a good player. This isn't going to be a good fantasy situation for him, but it'll help out Carson Palmer in the offense. John Brown is a legit wide receiver 3 this year. I don't think he's anything more than that, but he's a nice sort of flex wide receiver 3 play. And I mean, this David Johnson character is bursting onto the scene with a rushing, receiving, and kickoff return touchdown. in the first 2 weeks.
Yet Chris Johnson still starting, but
Chris Johnson's still plugging away.
So, no, I'm with you. I saw a very interesting stat, not necessarily fantasy related yesterday, but Carson Palmer, fun fact, is 14-2 in his last 16 games that he's played and started.
Wow.
I mean, that's amazing. And look, it's not like they're very flashy, but they get it done, man. And look, the coaching's good. Chris Johnson aside, the coaching is good. I'm with you on the receivers. It's kind of like a carousel, right? Like there's not going to be one go-to guy that's going to be a wide receiver one, I think. I think, though, if you were going to pick one the rest of this season, I would probably stick with Fitzgerald. I think Palmer probably trusts him the most for good reason. And I agree. It's not like he's going to have 8 for 112 every week. But do I think he could see, the most targets or be very close to it? Yeah, I definitely do. Michael Floyd, I'm out, man.
You're out. Okay. I can respect that. I
would just consider that a boom or bust at this point. Don't get me wrong. Will I probably go in on him on some DFS stuff if he's priced at $3,500? Sure. But am I going to pick him up off waivers? Probably not. Yeah. No, Fitz is still it, man. He's still plugging along, and I agree with you on the John Brown assessment. I think he's a very good player. I think he's another guy that Palmer just trusts.
Right.
And he's a very good wide receiver 3 that has, every week upside. I mean, he could go off just like Fitzgerald did. So running back, yeah, I mean, as much as I would love to totally push David Johnson on everyone this season, I just can't. And it's not him. Believe me, I love him. I really do. For Dynasty, I'm all over that. But again, Bruce Arians has this fetish for veterans. And Chris Johnson is the most veteran of veterans at this point, right? And then you got Andre Ellington, who's not even playing because he's hurt. So again, and I view Bruce Arians as definitely one of those guys that's not going to give another guy a job because of injury, right? So yeah, it's really unfortunate because look, David Johnson, to start his career, punt return, kickoff return, receiving touchdown. No one's ever done that in NFL history.
Yeah,
it's truly impressive, but I digress. Anyway.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because he's definitely a longer term play. I mean, if both Chris Johnson and Ellington are gone for a long stretch, he may break out and they may start to give more of a role. But you're right,
which is still possible because Chris Johnson and Andre Ellington like to get hurt. So it's not like it's unreasonable that they're Iron Men and will last the whole season. So and Palmer. So let me ask you this. This is a Well, we'll figure out a title for it later and have it sponsored. But Carson Palmer, where do you rank him quarterbacks this year in redraft? Actually rank. He's a quarterback 1, obviously, but where, 1st, 5th, 10th, where are you ranking him?
I was going to say that I think going forward, we have to look at him as sort of a lower end quarterback 1 every week starter. And if you drafted him in a redraft league, you won big. Because you have an every week starter now.
Well, and look, it's another perfect example of waiting on quarterback in your drafts and getting a good one. I mean, I guarantee you Palmer was taken in probably the teens as far as fantasy rounds go. But look, like you said, it's paying off big time. For me, I don't know, man. He's closer to probably the 6 to 9 range for me.
Ooh.
I just like him, man. He's on fire. I'm just a fan. And look,
we're fiery hot right now.
You know what? This week caused it. This week produced all these hot takes. So I blame the NFL. All right, Russ, I'm going to bring it back down to earth and possibly below the surface. I think everyone saw the catastrophe in Philadelphia yesterday. Obviously, the Cowboys won. But it's like I did hear someone on the radio today say that it's better to win an ugly game than to lose an ugly game. And the Eagles definitely lost an ugly game. It was just very, very bad. You had Bradford 23 of 37 for 224. He had a garbage time touchdown, 2 interceptions. Of course, he had the chest fumble. If Mark Sanchez is going to have the butt fumble, we can have a chest fumble. And that's what Bradford had. You had DeMarco, who through 2 games this season, 22 carries, 11 yards. He had 2 yards yesterday on 13 carries. Receiving, again, not a whole lot going on. You've got Jordan Matthews, 6 of 80. But again, another drop. that you really don't want to see from your wide receiver one. So I don't know, Russ. What is your assessment 2 weeks into the season? Are they done? Can you stick a fork in them, or are you buying low?
Oh boy, I am staying away from this situation if I can right now, and I'm letting it bubble over for a second because my favorite tweet of the week was someone that said Sam Bradford always looks like he's just seen a UFO. He just always is so confused out there.
Or he's just seeing like a crazy fan in the Philadelphia stands because they got a lot of them. So
the O-line is just so bad, and I think that's really the main problem. I think if Sam Bradford had a really good offensive line, he'd be fine. And I think if DeMarco Murray, as you saw last year, if he had a good O-line, he'd be fine. But when your running back gets hit 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage every single time, you're going to lose. Like, it doesn't matter how good the passing game is. If you literally lose yards every carry, there's no way you can sustain an offense. So until they get that figured out, it's just not going to – they're not going to win games.
It's just really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, they've actually measured it. He gets first hit a half yard behind the line of scrimmage. Behind the line of scrimmage. I mean, that's not going to cut it. You're not. I mean, that's just not going to work. You're not going to. I mean, no running back can make lemonade out of that. You know what I mean? So, at this point, Russ, are you selling Bradford or are you holding on?
I'm holding him just in case. I mean, it's still Chip Kelly, and I think I love the pace he plays with. So there could still be some weeks where I'd throw him in there and then hope for the best. And I mean, against the Falcons in the second half, they looked pretty good. So I'm not buying, but I'm holding the passing game still. Jordan Matthews is going to get targets on targets every week still.
And you bring up a good point. I think he's a perfect streamer play, especially against not good defenses. I think not enough people are really mentioning the fact that, look, the Dallas defense is pretty good. They were good last year.
Got Sean Lee back.
Yeah.
Got Sean Lee back,
So I'm not going to say it's not all Bradford's fault. It's a lot of Bradford's fault, but it's not all Bradford's fault. And he'll be playing those teams some weeks that's ranked in the bottom half of team defense, and he'll light them up. But yeah, as far as if anyone was banking on Bradford to win them a championship, I think you need to reevaluate that status at this point. So
I am selling DeMarco Murray, though. If you can get anything good for him right now, I'd do it because they're splitting. It's a three-way running back by committee now, and game over.
That sound effect, Russ, you made is all that we need to say. So, all right. Well, as we mentioned, football thankfully is back, but it already feels like the playoffs thanks to 1 week fantasy at DraftKings.com, with millions being won each week. Every play in every game can take you closer to a life-changing payday. This isn't fantasy as usual. It's DraftKings. Welcome to the big time. Hurry to DraftKings.com now and use promo code PFF to play for free with your first deposit in this Sunday's $1 million fantasy football contest. First place takes home $100,000. Enter PFF for a free entry now at DraftKings.com. That's DraftKings.com. So, Russ, speaking of DraftKings.com, you and I are both very heavy players in that. It truly is. I mean, look, we've all seen the ads like 1,000 times, but let's face it, it is good times, especially for fantasy players such as you and I.
It's so much fun, and again, as I mentioned last week, it doesn't have to cost you a lot of money. Like, there's a lot of cheap games that you can play strictly for fun. So, yeah,
and if it's head to head or tournament play or whatever. So. With that said, I know you and I, we are going to hit on some value plays heading into week 3 on DraftKings. So these are the guys that, every roster has to have those guys that you don't pay a lot for, but, hit a home run for you. I mean, you have to, especially in those tournament plays. If you're going to be in the money at any point, you've got to sort of sift through the stats and scroll way down on that list to find a guy that's going to hit a home run for you. So, with that said, Russ, why don't you lead us off? Lead us off with your first value play for week 3.
Okay, so I'm going to do a value play stack, which is Peyton Manning, Demaryius Thomas, and Emmanuel Sanders against Detroit. So the way I'm looking at this is they're so cheap right now for who they are. And I guess maybe I'm playing a little off the name power right now, but from what I saw last week, Manning's at least going to be able to get through the regular season fantasy-wise, at least early on. And it's still Demaryius Thomas. Um, I don't subscribe to the he's due narrative, but he hasn't caught a touchdown yet. Emmanuel Sanders has been getting tons of targets, and they're really cheap. And you can put all three of those guys in your cash game lineups and still have tons of flexibility in other spots. So I really like playing those three in a cash game and then sort of having some nice values elsewhere, you know?
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And like you said, Denver thankfully proved that they are not going away this season. We kind of got us scared in week one after playing Baltimore, but it looks like maybe they were just working the kinks out on that one. So, yeah, so I think, and you hit on another good point, Russ, which is stacking players on teams that you think are going to light it up.
Right.
You know, and don't get me wrong, I used to be a subscriber to the, oh no, I want to, you know, spread my dollars out. I don't want to bank all on one team. But look, if there's a really good matchup, a quarterback receiver matchup, then I think you gotta go for it. And like you said, with Denver and Demaryius and Peyton, that's a pretty good one to stack. So I can't fault you for that. My friend, I'm probably going to go the Arizona route, as we alluded to. You've got Carson Palmer this week playing San Francisco, who just last week allowed Ben Roethlisberger to just torch them through the passing game. You know, he's been the third most productive quarterback so far, at least according to Draftkings scoring, but he's still only the 11th most expensive this week, which to me, that's the epitome of value right there. And look, I love the matchup. He's healthy. He's at home. That would be a guy that I think I'm going to be playing in a lot of lineups. Is that crazy?
And he's not only got a high floor each week, but he's got a high ceiling too. Like he's just
like a 4 touchdown ceiling.
Yeah, like he's just really undervalued right now. So
right.
Yeah, I love that play. And as I said, I love that offense. So
yeah, well,
yeah, I think that's a great play.
That and you know, I'm going to be sticking in with Fitzgerald, who, you know, as we mentioned, will not be having an 8 for 112 and 3 line every game. But look, he had 6 for 87 in week one. That's not bad. And all you're missing there is a touchdown. Yet, you know, he's still priced at $5,800, which for DraftKings dollars is very good.
Yeah, that's a great deal on him too. Definitely.
You know? So yeah, that's definitely going to be a stack I'm going to be employing a lot of this week. So. Back to you, Russ. What other values can we give the fine listeners?
Okay, I really like Julian Edelman against Jacksonville. He's averaging like 27 points a game right now, or DraftKings points per game, and 11 catches in the first 2 weeks each game. So I'm gonna ride that. His salary didn't go up, or it went up like a really small amount. So yeah, Tom Brady is on a mission. They're going to run up every game. So I really like him.
That's my personal theory. Tom Brady is in full-on pissed off mode, and he just is. You know, I almost want to replace the DGAF meme with Jay Cutler with Tom Brady right now, because he just does not care. And like you said, he is just going to light people up, and he does not care what the score is. He doesn't care if like your mother's in the stands. He's just going to torch people. And Edelman seemingly is his favorite target. I mean, yes, you've got Gronk, which Gronk is Gronk. But, you know, care to guess, Russ, how many targets Edelman had just in week 2?
Oh, boy. Okay. I'm going to say 27.
That's really high. But you're on the right path. He had 19. Targets.
Oh, you mean last week?
Yeah, just in week 2.
Oh, I thought you meant the first 2 weeks.
No, just in week 2.
Wow, 19 targets.
Yeah,
wow.
19. I mean, that's ridiculous. So, yeah, I'm with you. I love Edelman. I've been an Edelman dynasty owner for the last 2 years, and I've been very happy. Yeah, it's good times there for sure. Let's see. What else do we got?
Really, though, it's like, who's to say he couldn't just have a Wes Welker type year? Like, it just seems like he's officially in that type of role now. So 100 catches.
Yeah, and he kind of already is, and he has the last 2 years, you know.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. What other values? Oh, I've got another New England Patriot for you, Russ. You know, I'm going to go Dion Lewis at running back, which, as we all know, any running back in New England is always going to be dicey. But it seems like Lewis is going to stick as far as the passing down back there. You know, he's been averaging 20 Draftkings points a week. He's the 6th most productive running back so far, and yet he only cost $4,200, which is fantastic in Draftkings money. So that's a guy that until New England proves me otherwise that they're not going to use him, I'm probably just going to hammer him home.
Yeah, I wasn't totally on him this week, which was a big mistake, but I don't think you're chasing points by putting him in your lineups now. I think he's got a role there, and he's been awesome. So 4,200 is still really cheap for him.
It is. And look, remember, as we all know, DraftKings is PPR, so Dion Lewis is going to rack the points up in a hurry.
Right, he's a lot safer than you'd think Dion Lewis would be.
Right. Yeah, I don't know anyone that had Dion Lewis on their radar this offseason. But
no.
Hey, again, that just goes back to the Patriots system. You know, they get these rejects and they drop them in their system and they just let them fly. So
right.
On the same vein, I'm going after another cheap running back, Russ. Let's talk about Gio Bernard for a little bit. He came on in relief of Jeremy Hill last week. You know, some say due to injury, some say due to being in the doghouse. But either way, Bernard tore it up. He had 123 rushing yards. You know, he's still a very good PPR option, obviously, but could he possibly be the lead back this week?
If you follow me on Twitter, Russell J. Clay.
At Russell J. Clay.
You'll notice every once in a while I'll start throwing out Bengals tweets. It's probably because I'm looking at their depth chart and I'm just in pure amazement. Gio Bernard is just an amazing third down back, and he's better than a third down back, but that's sort of the role they have him slotted in. He can handle a bigger workload than that, and he showed that last week. Jeremy Hill fumbled twice. I still think he's got a safe goal line role and safe 15-ish carries a week, but Gio has looked awesome. He's averaging like 6 yards a carry so far this year. And yeah, I'm buying him, especially at that price, like you said.
Yeah, he's at the basement low price of $4,700 this week in DraftKings. So, you know, you got to find value where you can find it. Even if that, you know, even if your two running backs are costing the same as a top tier running back, I'm still going for it. Bernard is literally averaging more yards per carry than he is per reception, just to give you an idea of how efficient he's been. So far. So
that's pretty good.
Yeah, but I'm with you. And look, the more guys you can put in your lineups that are maybe 5,000 or less, that just means the more guys you can get that are at the top tier. I mean, you can put Gronk in there, you can put Julio in there, you can put Antonio Brown in there.
Oh, you were reading my mind. Yeah, you just want those three in your lineups. It seems like they're all going for career years this year.
Right. So yeah, well, good. Anyone else, Russ, on your radar, or have we given the folks plenty of ammunition this week?
I like Eric Decker a little bit at his price.
Okay.
He already has a touchdown tonight, so we're lucky that Monday night doesn't go into the scoring for next week. But yeah, no, I like him at his price. Brandon Marshall takes all the number one corners, so I kind of like Decker as sort of a deep ball, tournament play.
Yeah, I'm with you because, look, he's a guy that easily could rack up a couple touchdowns off red zone targets or what have you. And I think something that doesn't get mentioned enough, you've got Shane Gailey there in New York now as offensive coordinator, who very pass happy, very good offensive coordinator. I mean, he really is. And I think the Jets are going to surprise some people this year. I think they already have over in week 1. And so far, week 2, let's get a real-time update. They are playing the Colts. We are recording this Monday night. So far, it is still looks like 7-0 in the second. So there you go. But yeah, I'm with you. So Decker, a good play, especially as your like third or fourth receiver on your lineup.
Yep.
All right, Russ. What other information can we give the fine folks at home?
Put week 2 behind you. If you did bad, it's okay. We're all there with you.
We're suffering just like you. So
there will be weeks like this, and it's fine. That's variance.
It is fine. We've got 15 more of them to go. So, well, good. Well, Russ, we will be back next week. Hopefully, not as much injury news as there was this week, but we'll also touch on some other DraftKings values for week 4, and then whatever the top stories are for this week. So until next time, he's Russell Clay. I'm Michael Moore, and we will see you next time.